Let's welcome on board Anand Tandon as well and figure out what he's making of the market right now. Anand, hi, afternoon. Good to have you on the show. Let's pick it up from what Somit was just flagging off. The flows that HDFC Bank is likely to get post the MSCI inclusion. Wanted to understand whether that could really resurrect the stock price movement because since the Q1 update, we haven't seen much of a movement in the stock. In fact, if nothing, it gave up all of its previous gains and it's been just lying quiet since.
Well, yes, I think overall the performance of HDFC Bank in the stock market has not been exceptional. And most of the gain that came was because they said that they had better margins, but that was only to be expected because when you give away part of your corporate book, obviously the margins will increase. And that is what caused the margin increase, which meant that you also had a slower credit growth. In that context, I don't think significant change will happen. Yes, there is no doubt that fresh money can probably come into the stock, and therefore you may see some technical reasons for it to move up. But the performance still will take a while for it to reflect. There is the biggest positive, I think, in terms of private sector banks in general, is the fact that credit has been outpacing deposit growth, and given the fact that most of the private sector banks are better off than their public sector counterparts in terms of being able to create a valuable franchise on the liability side, it helps to have a good network, and HDFC is probably one of the best in that regard. But besides that, the challenges still remain. You still have a few more quarters of a weaker NIM. I think the biggest positive going for HDFC is the fact that it is not expensive compared to where it was on its historical basis, as well as where the rest of the market is. So from that perspective, I think private sector banks in general, including HDFC, are somewhat relatively cheap.
Relatively cheap, but don't come without their challenges. They do have some challenges which are lined up as well. But talking about tomorrow, you have, of course, the reaction coming in for the CPI and IIP numbers, which are expected later today evening. So the market will be reacting to those cues. But separately, we're expecting earnings from the likes of Hindalco, Hero MotoCorp, Apollo Hospitals. So just keeping an eye out on some of those important cues that one needs to watch out for. In terms of listing, First Cry is going to list on the bourses tomorrow, aka Brainbees and Unicommerce Solutions as well. So we're watching out for a couple of these IPO action in the trading session. Lock-in period ends for Capital Small Finance Bank as well as Raji Peripherals. Both had seen good amount of traction at the IPO time. Let's see whether there's any action tomorrow or not. And of course, CAS verdict on Vinesh Phogat's silver medal appeal is pending. So 13th August will be very important to track with respect to what happens to that. Do we at least get a silver medal or not? Is dependent on that meeting come tomorrow. In fact, there's also this GST Council update at the bottom of the screen wherein the next meeting is expected to be on September 9th. Remember, the gaming stocks always come into focus whenever this chatter of a meeting is there as far as GST is concerned. So Nazara Tech, even Delta Corp for that matter, these are the stocks that usually react. So let's see whether there's a bit of a reaction to those names or not. Not really at the moment, and the market is also a bit volatile, so watching out for all of that. But since we're tracking earnings, of course, tomorrow Hero MotoCorp will also come out with numbers. Let me take it across to Srishti to get an understanding as to what the expectation is, because overall the numbers so far from the two-wheeler pack have been actually quite okay. In fact, from the entire auto pack, the numbers have been decent. Anand, what's the view given the fact that rural recovery is expected to pick up? Hero is a great play on that, on the mass consumption. Do you think Hero could perhaps surprise us on the upside in this quarter as well as the coming quarters?
It's possible, but the fact of the matter is that Hero has been somewhat weaker in terms of being able to introduce new product lines, especially beyond their smallest vehicles, which are their bread and butter right now. And given their somewhat weaker R&D strength as well, they are still unable to penetrate much. They have been losing market share overall. Their attempt to get into EV is through another company, not their own. So in all of these things, they are probably the weakest among all the other two-wheeler manufacturers. That said, as you said, the fact is that the rural market revival may help them. Do remember that Bajaj has been trying very hard to increase the market of the 125 cc's and above. And slowly, if the rural demand does move in that direction, that could be another longer-term problem for Hero to deal with. In the near term, the pricing for the entire two-wheeler space is exceptionally high. I mean, given where we were, you have just about reached the volumes or not yet reached the volumes of 2019. Market caps of all these companies are multiples of what they were. And we have a new Ola Electric also in the market, which is also going to take away some of the some part of the market. So overall, market shares for all the companies have declined, and yet you are fine. Of all the earlier listed private listed companies have declined, and yet the market cap for all of them have gone up fairly dramatically. So even though there may be marginal uptake, I'm not sure that necessarily this is something that will witness be a major wealth creator in the near term.
Right. Well, the Adani group of stocks, they are the ones which have been in the limelight since the weekend, and they've shrugged off their opening jitters that they saw after the latest Hindenburg note. This after the SEBI chairperson clarified that the allegations were baseless and urged investors to remain calm. In fact, Sharad joins in with all the analysis on how the stocks have performed since morning.
Well, yes, the Adani group of stocks have recovered after actually coming up with a close opening which was coming in the red. Now, interestingly, over the weekend itself, Hindenburg had come out with its report on SEBI chairperson and also on different companies. Now, of course, the clarifications have been coming in from SEBI chief as well as other important regulatory authorities as well. Now, also Adani Group had also refuted the claims made by Hindenburg. Now, interestingly, if you look at the overall recovery which has happened in Adani Group of stocks, they had started the day in the red, but there has been a strong recovery across the segments. Adani Enterprises recovering almost 5% from day's lows, Adani Energy, Adani Ports, and even Adani Power ranging a recovery of almost 5 to 11% from day's low. Also in the list is Adani Green Energy, Adani Total Gas, and even Ambuja Cement, where there has been a very strong recovery. So overall, Adani Group's stocks have recovered from the starting jitters which we had seen earlier in the day's trade.
Thanks so much for that, Sharad, for putting that into perspective. So yes, the stocks have recovered quite meaningfully and clearly shrugging off any concerns, if at all, coming in from that Hindenburg report over the weekend. But if I can come to you, Anand, on this matter, how would you, suggest and recommend investors to deal with issues like this going forward as well? Because entire weekend our WhatsApps were, completely, energized by all of these messages coming in with respect to Hindenburg, but then not really substantiated by evidence or facts.
I think this latest report is firing blanks. I mean, to say that, to insinuate really that someone who has a foreign fund investment, as if there is something wrong with that. I mean, what's wrong? If, both the SEBI chairperson as well as her spouse are very high earning professionals, have been working in the private sector for a very long time. It is not inconceivable that they would have moved some of the money out overseas and diversified a portfolio. And then to say that, the fund is actually invested in a company which is Adani. I mean, that's equivalent to saying that, because Adani, if you buy a Nifty ETF, you are also an investor in Adani, and therefore, you've done some kind of crime. So I'm not sure that this particular report has any truth, and to therefore conflate this with what has something to do with Adani. I think investors would be wasting their time on that. You have to take an independent view of whether or not the Adani group has some corporate governance issues. And, you may have a view which is different from what SEBI has put out, but that is irrelevant in the context of the current report that has come out from Hindenburg. This one, I think they are kind of doing an overstretch.
That makes sense, and no wonder then the stocks recovered as soon as they did see that knee-jerk reaction. But let me take it across to Sharad and get the dealing room pulse as well and find out what are the stocks that are being talked about this afternoon. Sharad?
Well, yes, in focus is Ola Electric Mobility, and the company has recently listed, and what we are gathering from dealers is domestic institution buying is coming, and it's coming as a basket buy across mutual fund houses. Interestingly, 3.4 crore shares exchanged hands across 11 bunch trades in the day's trade, and the volumes they have picked up over the last 2 days, and of course the listing happened 2 days ago. The IPO price was 76 rupees per share, and over the last 2 trading sessions the stock is up almost 40%, 2 upper circuits of 20% each for both the days. Now the key DIs already invested in the anchor book, they include the names such as SBI Mutual Fund and even HDFC Mutual Fund. Now looking at the triggers ahead for Ola Electric Mobility, this includes the rise in EV penetration, the expected launch in the bike segment on 15th August, and the rest of the launches expected in FY25. Also, the focus would be going ahead would be in the cost reduction because of the Gen 3 platform and the phased expansion of their battery business. And also by early next year itself, the company had stated that they would be using their own batteries as well. So the dealer buzz is that DI buying is coming across Ola Electric Mobility.
After their listing, Bhavish Agarwal, the CMD, says that the company is going to be focusing on profitability going forward. Also talks about how they're slated for a big product launch come August 15th.
Our focus is on profitable growth. We are looking to continue to improve our profitability, in a pun intended way, a sustainable business built sustainably. So that is our focus, and we want to continue on that. We have this big product launch event coming up on 15th August. It's our annual event, and we do it on India's Independence Day, because we want to share all the vision and all the products and all the technology that we work on.
Okay, so clearly Ola is big buzz in the trading session right now, 20% higher, but Ansh is with us right now to talk to us about the price volume buzzers. Ansh, thanks so much for waiting by. Tell us which are the stocks that you're picking out?
Yes, so Jubilant Food will be the first stock in focus, as the stock has given a good breakout from its upward sloping channel actually, and this is being backed by a heavy volume of around 8 times its average trading volume of last 20 session, indicating very strong participation in today's breakout. Also, the stock has touched 2-year high level as well. Apart from this, Voltas will be in focus, as the stock has given a breakout from its horizontal resistance zone, which was around that 1540 mark, and this is being backed by volume of over 12 times its average volume of last 20 sessions. Lastly, Balkrishna Industries will be in focus, as the stock has actually given a breakdown from its key support zone with volume of over 5 times, indicating very strong sell-off and negative sentiment in the market with the stock. Now, apart from these breakout stocks, there are high potential of high odds of Sun TV getting into ban list tomorrow and JNFC coming out of the ban list. So keep an eye on the stocks.
Stocks, whether they enter the ban or come out of that will be interesting to track. But what else is happening in the market? Well, of course, Voltas is one stock which is doing quite well. PSU stocks are off the highest point of the trading session, but a lot of earnings which are lined up as well. Hero MotoCorp, of course, we talked about. There's also Apollo Hospitals, which is expected to come out with numbers. Shrishti, why don't you begin by talking to us about Apollo Hospitals, and then we can discuss Hero MotoCorp as well?
Well, certainly, this time Apollo Hospitals is expected to slate good numbers, because across all the parameters we are expecting a good jump. Firstly, let's talk about the revenue. Then that's expected to show a growth of 15% on a YY basis. 5,095 crores is what we are expecting on that front. The EBITDA is expected at 673 crores, and the margins are also expected to see an improvement from 11.5% in Q1 of FY24. This time the expectation is of 13.2%, and that will be some basis point of improvement on a sequential basis as well. And lastly, on the profit figure, 286 crores is our assumption. That's about the numbers, but let's talk about the factors that could be driving this particular growth. So this time across, because of the increased occupancy, the numbers are expected to show a jump, because for their hospital business, we are expecting a 13% sales growth on a YOY basis. If we talk about their health corporations, that too is expected to show a substantial jump, because their AHLL division is expected to register a 10% growth in the revenues, and a 2 times growth in the EBITDA is what we are expecting. So all in all cylinders firing is what we can see for Apollo Hospitals this time around. And lastly, on the management commentary, we will be watching out for how the transition and the turnaround is happening for 24/7. And the company did announce that they're going to be making out some new acquisitions, and they are undergoing some of the capex as well. So what's the update on that front? We will be watching out for that.
Shrishti, what is it that one can expect from Hero MotoCorp?
Well, Hero MotoCorp too is expected to show a good growth this time around, because do remember there has been a 13% jump in the volumes on a YOY basis. The company did take a lot of price hikes, and even the product mix for Hero MotoCorp all in all has seen an improvement, because the share of the premium bikes was seen to be increasing in the quarter gone by. If we talk about their revenue, we are expecting a jump of 10% on a quarter-on-quarter basis. 10,477 crores is what we are expecting. EBITDA expected at 1,555 crores, and the margins also expected to see an improvement to 14.8% this time around. And do remember that across all these companies, be it Bajaj Auto, TVS Motors, they have seen improvement, and similar is the expectation from Hero MotoCorp as well. And lastly, on the profit figure, we are expecting 1184 crores. But apart from the management, the kind of numbers that the company could be posting, we will be watching out for the management commentary on how the competition is building up, how are they seeing the demand outlook, especially in the rural market, and some of the key launches that are lined up for Hero MotoCorp. We will be watching out for that. Back to you.
Right. We'll leave it at that. Srishti, thanks for flagging off Apollo Hospitals as well as Hero MotoCorp's earnings expectations. But Anand, just wanted to get you in here. I mean, lots happening within the two-wheeler pack, right? Especially now with Ola's debut as well as a listed entity. Wanted to understand, where do your preferences lie within the two-wheeler pack?
Well, as I just mentioned a while back, that it is still a sector which is struggling to increase volumes beyond the previous peak. And at the same time, there is enough of a technology disruption that is happening there. And whatever we have seen of consumer growth, most of it is happening now in terms of the higher end vehicles, especially because if you look at what's happening in cars, for example, much of the growth is coming through SUVs, not so much the lower priced vehicles or the sedans. So if you keep that context in mind, if there is a certain increase in rural demand, you would expect to see some volume increase coming in two-wheelers. But by and large, that may actually happen in motorcycles, which are perhaps a little more powerful than the baseline entry, because I think by and large, the preferences seems to be shifting towards that kind of thing. And while I don't expect EVs to be very popular in the rural areas, one could be surprised. So you have to keep in mind that hybrids and all these things will actually shake up the market quite substantially. In that kind of context, it's difficult to pick winners at an early stage, which is where we are, and therefore it is better to either take a basket approach, or perhaps, given the valuations where they are, leave that sector out, because it is not very clear who will be the survivor and the market leader going forward.
Taken time now to take the BTSC trades from our charters then. Nuresh, you go first.
So first would be a buy on HDFC AMC on verge of a breakout here. Stop loss at 4170, target price of 4260. Second is a buy on Cipla, knocking at that 1600 mark, which is a resistance. Stop loss at 1575, target price of 1640.
Taken Sony, what about you? What are the top BTSC trades that you would want to recommend?
Aisha will continue with Exide Industry as also BTST trade recommendation at the same stop loss and target as well. The second fresh recommendation which would be in HAL, which is looking like it's holding on to a support of 4680 for now. Also keeping a stop loss of 4680 and a target of 4800 can be seen. Now 4800 is a level of resistance. If it's able to cross that resistance, you can see an extended target towards 4850, 4860 as well. However, the first target is to be maintained at 4800.
Coming in as far as some of these BTSC trades are concerned, just taking stock of where we are ending the market, or at least perhaps near to that 24,360 thereabouts is where we're going to close the trading session. Not sure whether it will be a bit of a green or a red, because right now we're just flip-flopping between those lines. Nifty Bank holding in the green right now. Inox Wind has finally managed to be locked in upper circuit now, so 20% gain there. Rail Vikas Nigam has managed to chug along very nicely. Voltas, Glenmark Life, Jubilant Food, V-Guard, Amara Raja Batteries, these are some of your top gainers right now. On the losing side, Sun TV, Balkrishna Industries, Bharat Dynamics, Aster DM, etc. in the red. And LIC, interestingly, is down 5%. I thought that 20% growth that we saw in premium was pretty much okay, but looks like Street was penciling in much more, because it's taken a knock of almost 5% right now. Anand, wanted your take regarding some of these, names like Jubilant Food. It's been disappointing for last many quarters. In fact, Voltas too, for that matter, had been disappointing for last many quarters. And suddenly in Q1, there is a bit of a comeback of sorts for Jubilant Food with that 3% like-for-like growth, and for Voltas a solid 67% volume growth.
Well, yeah, for Jubilant, like much of the QSR space, the same store sale growth has been very anemic. This quarter, they did report slightly better numbers, and therefore, to that extent, I think the market has been somewhat pleasantly surprised. How long it will sustain, and whether they'll be able to take care of the local competition that is obviously eating into their biggest brands is an issue. I don't think they have done much with many of the other brands like Dunkin' Donuts, etc., which they have, potentially the ability to increase. Frankly, I'm not sure culturally we are a donut eating country. So there again, you may be actually finding it difficult to find reasons to grow. But overall, I think, this is a space which has been somewhat challenged. And again, trades at 80, 90, 100 times earnings. So it's not particularly cheap either. Uh, I don't know whether there is too much unless you see a sustained SSG growth again coming through, which is what they had delivered for several years in the past. If they can go back to that, then certainly there'll be some interesting things happening there. Otherwise, their international portfolio can possibly sustain some of the growth going forward. Voltas, again, it flatters to deceive. I don't think that there is any, obviously the best season in terms of ACs, for example, is now behind us. And for the next few quarters, there's going to be a bit of an issue in terms of that particular segment of growth. So the current year has been fairly bad, and the numbers that you are seeing are actually for that segment of the quarter that went past, which has obviously been fantastic in terms of the demand for ACs, etc. So I don't know whether we are going to be able to see this kind of sustained growth rate, and I would be somewhat circumspect again in terms of jumping onto the bandwagon now.
Interesting take there, Anand. Good to get in that viewpoint. But good to have you on the show as well. Soni, Naresh, we let you guys as well go on that note. Closing in.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.